Hi, today I'm going to be reading through a story that I've written as a sort of preparation for a more formal audiobook that's going to be available for purchase on Bandcamp, if you like. And this one today is just going to be just sort of a read through of the pages I've printed out to hear what it sounds like coming out of my mouth with my voice, because so far it's just been words on a screen. So I thought I'd share that with you on the internet. So before I start, let me introduce myself in case you've just stumbled upon this for the first time. My name is Patrick Bartmus, and I write stories and poems, and I try to make some music to accompany them and package them all together in little videos and publish them here on YouTube. So this story, called Hare and Crockery, is the second in a trilogy that I've been planning. It's sort of like an Agatha Christie murder mystery type genre story. And the first one actually is available on YouTube. On Bandcamp right now, so you can purchase that or listen to it for free on Bandcamp if you like. And I do want to mention Urbuli Baba, who is a free jazz percussionist here on YouTube, and he proposed the outline for the first story, Lord MacDougall's Demise, and it was just they were just chapter headings for a free jazz improvisation that he published on YouTube, and I took that as a cue to write a murder mystery myself. So that's where that came from, and this is an extension of it. The next one I'm hoping to be a little larger, a little longer, and more involved, more of a character study of this detective named Big Suz, who is actually it didn't connect it. I'm going to put a little link on the screen and probably down in the description to Urbuli's to his channel, to that video. But I didn't realize that Big Suz, the name of the character, the name of the detective, was named after a fellow musician, and I thought he just made it up as another form of improvisation. And by the time I was deep into the story and realized that this was a real person, I decided I would just go ahead and make it anyway. And turns out he liked it. So that's the story of this story. I'm just going to read it out loud for you. I might divide it up into 2 videos. Depends on my stamina this afternoon. But hope you enjoy it. Yeah. The Hare and Crockery, Chapter 1, Theft. Judith Carr, manager and bartender at the Hare in Arthington, came to work Saturday morning and began mopping the tiles. Her AM radio chattered tinnily and hissed softly, tuned to a talk show that she always caught while she mopped. The rhythm of the 2 presenters' patter seemed to ease the strain of scouring the old worn glaze. Mid-splash, she heard a door slam in the kitchen, and the owner's reedy voice sputtering out a string of curses. As she turned to peer through the short hallway, he burst out, red-faced. "Have you been in the lobby this morning?" he demanded. "No, Mark, I always come in through the side door." "We've been robbed, Judy." "What?" The broom handle smacked against the brass bar and rattled to the floor. "Last night?" "The safe is open, and all the money is gone." Mark Quinnell, publican and innkeeper, turned ash white. Guest book 2. Something about the way he slumped against the bar as he said it suggested to her that the registry was more important than the money. Cold blue morning light glared through the small front windows and paled the 2 as they stared at each other in disbelief. Quinnell still wore the ochre tracksuit that he used as pajamas, so Judith surmised that he had been storming around the place since he awoke, looking for that book. His suite was attached to the kitchen, a bedroom, sitting room, and, in the recent addition, lavatory and study. It had been the landlord's residence since the Hare was built 300 years ago. The site itself was even older, a former Cluniac nunnery, and was part of Arthington Estate. Quinnell's family had run the inn for 3 generations, but signs of its senescence had, in the form of disrepair and fetor, had begun to emerge. Judith, as the primary employee, was aware of the delicate balance in Quinnell's finances that had been tipped by this robbery. Perhaps something still could be done. Perhaps the thief was not far away. She said, "Call the police." Although Arthington was a small village, it was on the Leeds Northallerton line, and Harrogate Road was easily accessed from Leeds by Arthington Lane. Judith reasoned, as she led Mark back to the phone, that if the burglar was local, he might still be caught, providing the police arrived swiftly enough. She didn't say, as he dialed, that someone from out of town would probably be counties away by now. Inspector Suzz rented a room just north of Leeds in Headingley, and his phone rang while he ate breakfast. It was Sergeant Pearson at the station informing him of the burglary and suggesting, since he lived nearby, he would not need to check in before investigating. Within the hour, Suzz was driving his Morris 8 along Ecop Lane toward Northallerton Road. It was a cool gray September morning, just the kind he would have spent driving through the rolling green hills anyway. But instead of trout fishing at one of the ponds near the reservoir, he was suddenly on duty. The low rumble from the side valve engine and the muffled exhaust comforted him, and he allowed his mind to wander for a few minutes as he noted that he was the only driver on the road. It had been a busy summer at work, with the drawn-out Brigitte heist and ugly Ellis trial, but he kept winding his way back to memories of the 4th Test of the Ashes series. He chuckled ruefully as he remembered the stand that Bradman and Morris had put together, which led to Australia's team setting a new world record for the highest victorious run chase in Test history. Cricket had become Suzz's main preoccupation recently, and watching a game was as deep a source of fulfillment as cruising in his little auto. Arthington was spread along the road, stretching for a mile from Harewood Manor to the train station. Suzz steered toward the manor and found the it's hard to say. Suzz steered toward the manor and found the inn sitting across the road from Harewood's entrance. The inn was a plain 2-story stone building that had obviously sat there before the road was paved. A hedge grew along one side, and the front door opened almost onto the limestone gravel. He followed a narrow drive that led... Okay, I'm going to be making corrections here. That led to the rear parking area, revealing a patio and addition which, although newer than the modeled white building, had fallen into disrepair in the past 50 years. Suzz noted that it was probably one of the easier places to break into, and its shabby condition may have been deterrent enough for any serious criminals. He entered through a small side door and found the owner pacing the tiles. "Mr. Quinnell, I am Inspector Sussman. Have the constables arrived yet?" Quinnell's little black eyes were expired coals, sunken into an ashy face. "No one's been here but you, Inspector." Judith chimed in. "The police operator told us not to open doors until you arrived, and the clock is almost at 9. Quinnell's cheeks flushed as he muttered to her, "My guest will be expecting a meal soon." Big Suzz squinted around the room and, frowning, replied, "In cases like this, Mr. Quinnell, we need the scene of the crime to remain undisturbed. How many guests are staying here? 5. There's a couple in the first floor suite. Please show me where the robbery took place. Afterwards, you may certainly open your doors. He gestured toward the lobby and continued, I will need to speak with the guests before they leave, of course, and I would like a list of last night's patrons. Judith had already jotted them down in her receipt book, and as Quinnell led Suz toward the lobby passage, she ripped out the page. Rook's at the kitchen door. She nudged Suz's forearm with the sheet and said curtly, May we prepare breakfast now? Suz stopped and looked at her. Who is Rook? Quinnell replied over his shoulder. He cooks our food. Was the kitchen door disturbed this morning? No, all the doors were locked except front. I do not intend to impede the course of your business, Mr. Quinnell. I will look at your safe and then visit your kitchen. Then you may start your day. A rattle at the back door interrupted him, and Judith turned on her heel. He said to her as she pushed through the kitchen entry, Thank you for this list, Mrs. That's Judith. She helps run the place. Not your wife? No, sir. Manager. My wife is gone. They were in the small lobby, which held a simple desk, a cabinet stuffed with books and boxes, and a large cedar wardrobe. Behind the desk, at knee level, a small safe stood open and empty. Everything else in the tidy room seemed to be in place. Do you know exactly what was in this safe? Quinnell pointed at a sheet of ledger paper on the desk. It was another list written in Judith's hand. You two composed this today? She helped me remember. Everything else can be replaced, except the guest book. Suz flicked his eyes over the gridded sheet, then back up to mark Quinnell's face. Quinnell twitched. And the money, of course. It was at this moment that Suz put words to his first impression of the landlord. His little black eyes, mischievous smirk, and curly auburn hair, combined with the quick movements of his lithe frame, gave him the appearance of a tousled fox terrier. Anyone suspicious visit last night? Well, yes, Inspector. A businessman arrived yesterday on the afternoon train and booked a room, but said he wouldn't have the money to pay until this morning. Is it normal for you to allow guests to sleep in a room that they have not paid for? Well, no, not normal, but he said he would be making a sale this morning and named a local farmer. Although I thought he looked respectable. Just in case, I gave him the corner room right next to my apartment. Quinnell jutted his thumb towards the opposite end of the building. I will need to speak with him first, I think. Inspector, that's the thing. His room is empty. When's the morning train? Not until 10, but I've already called the station and the platform is empty. Probably left on foot, but I'll send a constable there anyway. May I use your phone? Suz called, I don't know how to pronounce this town, Otley? Called the Otley Constabulary and asked for an officer to stake out the train station. Mr. Quinnell, I'm not at liberty to discuss ongoing investigations, but I need to alert you to a fact which may have some bearing on your missing property. Quinnell's ears perked up. You see, began Suz as he settled into the large oak chair behind the reception desk, the reason I have been called into this case, is because there's been a series of thefts in this area, starting a few months ago in Leeds, that share a similar profile. The robbery that occurred here last night, or more probably this morning as you slept, may have been committed by the same person. Oh, yes? Quinnell's excited yet confused response piqued Suz's interest, but he was as yet unable to interpret it, so he merely filed it away in his memory for future reference. As a reminder, he extracted his notepad and scrawled Quinnell's name at the top of the fresh sheet. What was this guest's name? Well, that's the other thing, said the little man, wiggling his finger. I think he said his name was Abernathy. James Abernathy? Or Abercrombie? Something like that. But he did not have a Scottish accent at all. Judith entered and interjected. It was Barclay. But he was definitely not Scots. I'd say Geordie. Did he not sign the guest book? As Suz asked, he sighed heavily through his thick mustache. Of course he signed it, and now it's gone. He added 3 names to his list along with Judith's. His eyes settled on the open safe door. Is the combination to this lock written anywhere? In the desk drawer, stated Quinnell matter-of-factly. Suz scooted back and pulled it open, revealing a very orderly drawer with a slip of paper taped to the back. The corners of the cellulose tape appeared to be sealed firmly against the wood, so it had not been pried back in haste. Has it moved since you last saw it? Both innkeepers leaned forward and peered in, shaking their heads no. Suz slid his fingernail under the edge of the tape, and it did not give, the way adhesives lose their gumminess after repeated applications. Soft voices and movement on the stairs above them distracted them, and Suz quickly shut the door, easing the safe door closed with his knee. He wanted to see the reactions of the people as they descended. 3 guests stepped into the lobby, and it became so cramped that Judith had to back out through the pub entry, and Quinnell stepped into the front doorway. He greeted his guests, and pointed at Big Suz, who eyed each face with mild interest. This is Inspector Susselman. He's here to conduct inquiries. Inquiries? Yawned a tall man with aquiline features. This may not be the most convenient place, said Suz very politely as he rose. May I ask you to convene in the pub for a few minutes? It will only take a few moments of your time. When Suz stood, his sheer physical presence in that small room did more to quell their curiosity than the tone of his voice. As they filed past, he noted that none of them cast their eyes in the direction of the safe. Chapter 2. The Guests. Thank you for your patience, Suz began as the guests were seating themselves. He glanced at the landlord and said, My name is Jacob Sussman, with the Leeds Police Department. Sussman. As I have been informed that your meal is being prepared. So meanwhile, I hope to gather some information about a theft that occurred last night. Another woman entered the pub, and he gestured for her to join the other guests. First, merely as a formality, may I have your names? Starting with you, Mrs. The woman who entered smoothed her thinning ash-blonde hair and said coolly, Miriam Cadell. I'm visiting my husband, who resides at the manor. What is this all about? There's been a theft of inn property, and I am investigating. He turned to the group and said, Incidentally, I do not plan to be here for more than a few hours, so if you're scheduled to leave today, please let me know now. Why? Asked the tall man. So that I may collect your contact information for any future questions. May I have your name, sir? Gwen Clark. I'm with the Department of Transportation. Here on business, sir? Inspecting the stations, preparing for the consolidation of railway lines. I've booked a room for the week, so you will have plenty of time to consult me. I fell asleep at 9 last night, and I did not hear a thing until 7 o'clock this morning when a bullfinch sang in the tree outside my window. Oh, piped the other woman in the room. I heard that plumbird, too. Plumbird, muttered Suz. You must be visiting from Wales." "That I am, Inspector. My husband and I are on holiday here for 2 more days." The man seated beside her spoke up. "Fishing. I'm Stephen Morgan, and this is Ellen." Suz nodded, writing their names in his book, and glanced up at Judith. "Judith Carr, and in the kitchen is Rook Collings. The only other person here last night was Jared West, a man who cleans up, a boy who cleans up. He left before 8. Really, Inspector, I doubt any of these people would have heard anything. Mark's apartment is through the kitchen, and he can hear everything that happens down here at night. If a fox disturbs the gravel out front, he tells me about it the next day." "So, just to be clear," Suz spoke icily to the group, "was anyone aware of activity during the night? Even a trip to the restroom?" The group was silent and shook their heads. Just then, the kitchen entry swung open, and a middle-aged man with heavy sideburns and a mop of curly salt and pepper hair brought a tray of breakfast food into the pub. Suz stepped aside and watched as the guests nervously prepared to eat. He did nothing to ease their anxiety. He knew that people reveal a lot about their inner workings as they are dining, so he wanted them a little on edge so he could observe. As they sat, he stated, "There is one guest missing. Has anyone seen Mr. Abernathy?" "Barclay," corrected Judith as she helped distribute the dishes. Yes," consented Suz, darting a glance in her direction as he surveyed the group. No one seemed to acknowledge either name, and they all shook their heads as they began eating. Mr. Clark, the transportation agent, looked mildly irritated, and Mr. Morgan looked uncomfortable while his wife seemed to offer a gesture of assurance. She reached out and rested her hand on his jacket sleeve, revealing her thin white wrist. "Not the calloused, suntanned wrists of an angler," he noted. As everyone was finishing their meal, sipping tea from the inn's cheap white cups, the pub door opened, and a heavy-set middle-aged man shuffled in. He scanned the room and caught Mr. Morgan's eye, but immediately saw Suz standing by the bar and walked straight past Morgan. Quinnell greeted the man wearily. "Ted." "Morning, Mr. Quinnell," said Ted, fixing him with a sharp glance. "Nice chase last night." This is Inspector Sussman from Leeds." "Oh, hello, Inspector," he nodded and smirked. "Long way from the race course for breakfast," suggested Suz, not meeting the man's gaze. "Well, now, Weatherby bain't too far away, I reckon, to visit friends. I laid a bet on a horse for Mr. Quinnell here, and came to settle up." "Oh, did you?" "Caddy 2 ran well. Went to the course myself and observed the win. I expect McGuire wants another crack at Aintree. Did you stay at Weatherby last night, Mr. Boyes?" "Yes, Inspector. I was home tucked up by 10 o'clock. I don't know if you pronounce that name. I wrote the name down, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Boyes. Boyes. Quinnell inserted, "Only, we've had a theft here, Ted, and the inspector has been trying to find a witness." "That's nothing to do with me." The jowly man placed an envelope on the counter next to Quinnell and stepped back, tugging his forelock. "Well, Mark, I'm sorry for your loss. I hope this makes up for it." "Mark knows where to reach you, Mr. Boyes, if I have any more questions." "Of course, Inspector," slurred Ted Boyes as he departed. "Always willing to help." Mark thumbed open the envelope and sighed. Should have bet more than a tenner. The disruption stirred the guests from their tables, and each started to exit the pub. Suz said to them, "I shall endeavor to solve this quickly." Quinnell shot Suz a hopeful glance. However, Mr. Quinnell, in cases like this, we rarely recover the cash. The other property you mentioned may simply have been discarded. If we find the culprit, we may yet find your book. Quinnell buried his eyes under his brow with an unreadable expression. Was it relief? Anxiety? Shame? Suz wanted the guests to hear his reassurance and risk the embarrassment of openly discussing the inn's burglary to gauge their reactions. The only person who showed interest was Mrs. Cadell, and as she walked past him. "May I speak with you for a moment, ma'am?" "Yes, Inspector," she responded warily. They waited for the others to leave, and he turned to rest his elbows on the bar. She matched his posture and looked sideways at him expectantly. "I don't know much about the manor. Could you share what exactly they do over there?" "It has been converted to a kind of hospital," she explained. "I don't know if the owners even live there anymore. The army began treating injured soldiers there during the war before sending them out again." Her voice crackled with grief, so she cleared her throat. Suz felt the soft interruption was strikingly gentle and sad. Yet she held her composure with such nobility she could have been the lady of the manor herself. "And then afterwards, they opened more rooms for men who needed long-term recuperation." "Are you satisfied with the care your husband has received?" "They're doing as well as they can," she replied evenly. She drew in a long, quiet breath, during which the clouds parted and briefly brightened the room. "I stay here for a few days every few weeks, or as long as I can bear it." "I see," responded Suz. "I'm sorry to put you through this, ma'am, trying to get my bearings here. I should be going across the road now. He'll be getting ready for exercise. Thank you for speaking with me." Mrs. Cadell slipped out of the room, leaving Suz there to review his observations. In a moment, Judith entered from the kitchen and began cleaning the tables. "When does your help arrive, Mrs. Carr?" "I have a girl come in mid-morning to help clean the rooms and prepare for lunch. Then Jared comes in for the evening around 3 o'clock. It looks like a busy life, managing an inn. Do you get days off to spend with your family?" "I live next door alone, Detective Inspector. I spend all my time here." "I see." Suz paused, embarrassed, and asked, This may seem indelicate, but I must ask bluntly, what is your relationship with Mr. Quinnell?" Judith stopped work, straightened, and addressed him frankly. "I cannot see how this pertains to your investigation, but he is merely my employer, regardless of what gossip may exist." "Why would there be gossip?" "Mrs. Quinnell left a few months ago, and Mark carried on as if nothing was wrong. That's just his way. But people say she left with a guest from London, and I stayed to replace her." "But you did not?" "I stayed because I need a job," she said with the exasperated tone of a person weary of explaining her tone. With the exasperated tone of a person weary of explaining her motives. "It is difficult to find work in a small community," empathized Suz. "And to maintain privacy," she added as she gathered the plates and cups into a tub. Suz respected her dignity and had to admit to himself that this line of questioning was truly only to satisfy his own curiosity. "Thank you for answering my questions, Mrs. Carr. I did not mean to be rude by prying." She nodded grimly as she passed him into the kitchen. Chapter 3. Eels. Practices of police work had shown Suz that when a theft occurred within a small community, even a temporary one like a group of guests in a hotel, the thief rarely hid the item amongst their own possessions. they would find a nook outside the premises to hide it, and yet the location would be a place that they could justify visiting if they were observed. Suz decided not to search the rooms because he did not want to risk alerting the thief to his suspicions. He scanned the public areas of the inn as he went outside for a more earnest search. In the back, he lifted the lids of the trash cans and of the trash bins and pushed aside the top layers of food waste and packaging. In one bin, he found, on the very top, as if casually thrown away, a collection of pottery shards. He removed them and loosely assembled them on the lid, discovering that it had been a whole dish. The surfaces were clean, so it had not been dropped with food in it. Something about the texture of the glazing and the thickness of the ceramics reminded him of his childhood. His mother used the same set of bowls every time she baked. His mother used the same set of bowls every time she baked shepherd's pie. She maintained that this earthenware crockery was the only kind that properly distributed the heat through the pie and created this crispy, sweet crust. As he pocketed a few of the shards, Suz ran his fingers along the rough edges, remembering the distinct blend of caramel and beefy aromas whenever he entered the house after school, knowing that they would be having pie for tea. A linked but unbeckoned memory surfaced from his adult life. It was an ordinary moment in a normal day, but the clarity of the images stilled him. His wife had begun to prepare a pie for the family, and just to spend time with her, he had wandered into the kitchen and asked if he could help. She told him to flour the bowl, and when he reached for the nearest one, she swiftly yet gracefully intercepted him. Although she was rushing to finish in time, she stopped and explained sweetly and calmly, informing him that a shepherd's pie must be baked in a certain sized bowl. Too large, and the mash would burn before the stew was cooked. Too small, and the stew will boil over through the mash before it could develop its sweet crust. He looked at the cupboard and saw that there were 3 sets of the same bowls, each with a small, medium, and large size. He had asked, "So we never used the other 2 bowls in the set?" She replied with a smile, "Every time I see one of these sets in the shops, I buy it. I only use the middle size, and when I have a large enough collection of the others, I will take it to the jumble sale. Good food is worth the price, and someone else is getting a new bowl at charity shop prices." He smiled back. "Everyone wins." He had felt like a child again when receiving detailed and intense lessons from his mother. When receiving detailed and intense lessons from his mother lent ordinary things a special glow. He remembered loving his wife very much in that moment, reflecting that most women would simply shoo the bumbling policeman out of the kitchen. She showed the level of precision and intelligence that he hoped he displayed in his own job, and his respect for her deepened. The sharp edge of the broken crockery brought his attention back to the moment, and he drew a long breath to release the memory. Just before he slid the rest of the shards into the bin, he saw a wad of pink paper that looked familiar. He retrieved the paper and walked over to a nearby shed where there was a tackle bench beside a half-open door. He uncrumpled the paper and began flattening them on the bench. They were, of course, betting slips, with dates ranging over the past month and small sums crossed out, indicating payment of debt. He assembled the papers and folded them neatly into his pocket as he straightened his back. Inside the shed, something reflective caught his attention, and he pushed the door open. Behind him, he heard a shoe scraping along the gravel and heard a groan. Quinnell had come around the side of the building. Nothing in that old shed, Inspector," he squeaked nervously. "It's falling apart." Without turning around, Suz peered closer into the musty gloom. "Looks like a boat shack." Yes, said Quinnell, coming around to put his hand on the door. My father took guests out on the river when I was young. I never learned to mess about in boats. Suz could sense that the man was trying to divert him. So he said, as he allowed Quinnell to close the door, "Those contraptions didn't look like boats." What are you keeping in there, Mr. Quinnell? Quinnell looked crestfallen. Oh, those putcheons aren't mine. No. A few years ago, I let one of the old boys keep them here, but I don't think he's been back for them. Quinnell's eyes shifted nervously as he insisted. I'm no poacher, Inspector, and if some of the men around here use my shed to hide their gear, I can't control that. I understand, Mr. Quinnell, Suz said easily. I'm only looking for your stolen property. Poaching and off-track gambling are not my focus today. Gambling? I found some markers out here. Well, if Teddy Boyes is back here betting with guests, I don't know about it. Quinnell pursed his lips angrily and said, I did hear him talking about the match with that Welshman yesterday. Mr. Morgan? Yes, he seemed to be quite interested, but not very well informed, if you ask me. If he lost money to Teddy, it's his own fault. Suz felt the conversation had veered away from a salient point and paused to collect his thoughts. Just then the phone rang inside, and Quinnell took that as an opportunity to excuse himself, muttering something about slow time of year. Suz creaked the shed door open and confirmed that the eel traps were battered and covered in dust. They had not been used for years. He returned to the inn through the kitchen door and encountered Rook, who was fuming as he rattled through a set of cupboards high above his head. Something I can help you with, Inspector? The surly cook shouted distractedly. Yeah, I'll read that again differently. Something I can help you with, Inspector? The surly cook shouted distractedly. Perhaps I can help you. You seem to be searching for something. Rook shot him an icy look. You want to help me find a bowl? He stepped off the stool and lurched over to the stove, jabbing his finger at an empty space on the shelf above. Anything look suspicious to you up here? On the shelf was a set of crockery, exactly like the kind his mother had. She'd even kept hers over the stove so it would be readily available when she was cooking. The bowls were neatly lined up, and one was obviously missing. Silently, Suz withdrew one of the shards and held it between his fingers. I believe you'll find the rest in a bin out back. Rook's bristly cheeks darkened, and his eyes smoldered black as pitch. In that moment, he gained the appearance of a crow, and it occurred to Suz that his nickname was quite descriptive. That clumsy boy, he cursed under his breath. Then he croaked as he slammed the table. He will hear about this tonight. Only now I have to make do with 3 bowls, and it's almost lunch. I know this crockery is valuable, Mr. Collings, growled Suz, trying to match the cook's angry tone. But can you not use something else until it's replaced? The cook seethed. Not in the correct portion size. Then he paused, and his eyes softened as he stared at the inspector. Something about Suz's massive presence, impassive and at ease, even managed to calm the worst tempers. Then, as if the storm had passed from memory, he responded coolly, You see, we have a gang of regulars who come in every Saturday morning, every Saturday, expecting shepherd's pie. I must come in and prepare the pies first thing on Saturday morning and have them cooked by lunchtime. Only 5 bowls fit in the oven, and usually each one gets eaten. So if someone else comes in for pie afterwards, I won't have enough time to fix another. I do see now, said Suz sympathetically. Yes, Rook shook his finger at the door. "Jared will answer for this." He withdrew his finger and said apologetically, "If these people break something, they just need to tell me, that's all. How am I supposed to serve my diners without crockery?" Quindel's apartment door creaked open, and the landlord, glaring questioningly at Rook, said, "Inspector, you are wanted on the telephone." He opened the door wider and gestured into his room. "You may use my extension if you like." He hadn't noticed before, but the landlord's quarters had been built at a slightly higher elevation than the rest of the building, so there were 2 stone steps leading into the room. Although at first it seemed odd to sacrifice privacy for proximity, Suz instantly felt he was in a separate part of the building as soon as he entered. The telephone receiver lay on a small table near the door, and as he answered, he looked around the parlor. It was large enough to serve as a living room, and he could see the 2 doors leading to Quindel's private suites. For previous generations, it had probably served as the manager's office, but for the Hare, but Quindel seemed to use it as a living space quite effectively. However, the rooms would indeed be close quarters for even a happy couple. The phone call was from Constable Scarth at the train station, reporting that no one had boarded the morning train. Suz decided to search the local lanes for other possible routes out of the community. At the crest of a hill, he looked down into the valley and saw a copse which grew along the riverbank. The Morgans stood with their fishing poles at their sides, looking into the trees. He parked the Morris in the lane and walked toward them. As he approached, he saw that they were talking with somebody in the shadows, and although the wind was blowing their conversation away from him, he could see that it was somewhat contentious. As they gesticulated to the man in the trees, Stefan caught sight of Suz and turned away from the river. Immediately, the other man slinked away, presumably back down to a boat, and disappeared downstream into the woods. The Morgans dropped their poles in the grass and walked towards Suz, dismayed. "Was that Ted?" "No, he didn't give me his name," said Stefan, shaking his hand in exasperation. "He just kept going on about how we'd found his spot." Ellen contributed, "He demanded to know who told us about it. I told him I didn't know what he was on about, but he was adamant. I was trying to think of a way to get away from him when you showed up." "Probably a local poacher," suggested Suz distractedly. He was bothered by something about the way Stefan spoke. The way he formed his words did not seem quite right, like he was trying very hard to enunciate. His haircut and bearing suggested that he may have had military training, so Suz guessed that he might have suffered a head wound. It would explain his nervous behavior. "Were you stationed up here during the war?" The Morgans froze, and both of them blanched. "Yes," blurted Stefan, while Ellen sucked in a sharp breath. "I suppose you knew about this bend in the river from your days off." "Yes, Inspector. How did you know?" When he spoke again, with his guard down, the odd manner of speaking became more obvious. It was not Welsh. It was not even English. "And I suppose," continued Suz comfortingly, "that it reminds you of fishing in Canada?" Ellen's fair cheeks flushed as she gasped, "Inspector, please don't ask any more." Stefan drew her close, and she began to weep. The false accent couldn't hide the peculiar formation of his vowels. "They passed an act last year that created a separate citizenship for me. I'm aware of this, Mr. Morgan, but it does not end your preferred status here. There is no reason to travel about under a false name. Can you not apply for indefinite leave?" "No, Inspector, he cannot," wailed Ellen. Stefan stroked her shoulder and said, It is possible, sir, for a member of the armed services to apply for ILR, but I am not in the army anymore. I have chosen to leave. Suz realized what the man was saying. Oh, well, that does complicate things. Ellen tore herself away and walked briskly back to the river. Stefan, your situation is fragile enough without having to deal with this theft. I need you to be completely honest with me right now. If I can do anything to help you. Do you have any information about this money that's missing from the inn? An expression of disgust flashed across the young man's face, followed by anger, and said, as he glanced at Ellen, he said, "No, Inspector. We don't know anything about that." Suz glared heavily into the man's hazel eyes, and, after a long pause, said, "Well, I cannot help you avoid charges of desertion, but this false name is another matter. Have you signed any leases or legal documents as Morgan?" "No, I've been staying with Ellen and her family in Wales since the war." "Then you may be safe from conviction." "It's not a crime to use a false name here?" "Not technically, unless you've married the girl under this name." "We are not married," Stefan confessed, obviously more ashamed of this than the desertion. "But her last name really is Morgan, and I've been with them so long, I feel like I'm part of the family." Stefan's ingenuous manner had begun to charm Big Suz, and he couldn't help smiling a little under his mustache. Such an open person surely deserved a chance to live his life freely, sharing it with a girl who truly adored him. "I still have some contacts in the army. Let me make a call this afternoon. I won't give any specific information, but maybe we can find a way through this." Stefan's hopeful expression warmed Suz's heart. He cautioned, "Do not leave this town until I can make it safe for you." "Oh, I won't, Inspector. We won't." He spun around and ran back to Ellen. Suz walked back up the path, shaking his head mirthfully. Well, it's about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through. I'm going to pause here, take a break, end the video, and I will return again in a few days. Maybe I'll record another video and replace it and upload it tonight. I don't know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sitting through this. I hope you come back and listen to another one, to part two.